Today is September the 5th, 2014, and my name is Tanya Finchum, along with Juliana Nykolaiszyn, and we're with Oklahoma State University. And today we're in Shawnee, Oklahoma, to speak with Bill and Joe Ford. And this is part of our Centennial Farm Family project, so thank you for having us today.
You're most welcome. We're glad to have you here. You got a good football team this year, by the way.
We hope.
We watched them play Florida State, and that was pretty exciting. So, are you a big Cowboy fan?
I'm from Florida.
Oh, well, oh my goodness.
I went to Florida State.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about it a lot.
But go Pokes.
Okay, all right.
So let's begin with having you tell us a little bit about the farm that we're talking about today.
Sure.
What's it called?
Well, it's the Joseph A. Ford Farm,
Okay.
and that's how we've always called the Ford Farm. And so I can tell you a little bit about the family, how they came to Oklahoma,
Okay.
and that's kind of what I guess what you want to hear.
It's a good place to start.
Okay, in 1895, there were, there were 5 runs in Oklahoma, settlements where they opened the land for settlement, and pioneers came from different states and helped settle Oklahoma. Well, there was 5 of them, and the last one was the Kickapoo Land Run, and it was over here between Shawnee and Oklahoma City, around north of McLeod. And that was the last run that they had, and it opened for settlement. My great-grandparents were from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and in 1895 they came down when they opened the settlement up, and they drew an allotment in those days. A lot of the TV depicts everybody lining up, and they shoot the gun and they go running across the prairie and fall down and all that. Well, this is where they had an allotment drawing. And so they came down from Michigan in what was called an immigrant car. Have you ever heard that phrase? An immigrant car was like a box car with slats in it, so you could breathe inside, and and air and all that. Well, it took 5 days to pull it from Michigan to McLeod, Oklahoma, is where they got off the train. The car, you would put livestock on one end, your household goods on the other, and you rode in the middle 5 days. And so that's how they came down, and it was quite an endeavor. And my great-grandmother's family, there were some memos there that said that her name was Emma Ford, and said Emma went to the frontier, and that was the end of it. And they said there were no more communications that we could ever find. And so you can imagine it'd be like today going to Central Australia or someplace, and you've just left your family. And by doing that, you just, oh my, you're on your own. There's not a where's mom and where's dad and all that kind of stuff. So they came down, got off the train at McLeod, Oklahoma, and their allotment was northeast of there where the farm is today. And so when they went over there, they had no idea where they were going or what was there. It was just, that was your luck of the draw. So when they got over there, there was a lot of woods and some farmland and some places to have some water. Of course, you had to have water. But the other people at McLeod said, well, my goodness, that's not a very good place for your allotment. Why don't you come back to McLeod and we'll help you settle over here? Well, great-granddad, he was a very outgoing person, and he said, no, I've already made friends with the Kickapoo Indians. I'm staying put. And so the Kickapoo Indians were very much part of our settlement, our family's settlement in this part of the country, because they immediately made friends with each other. Great-granddad he was a good farmer. He planted pear trees and pecan trees. And pears, you didn't have fruit in those days. And you needed fruit. Of course, you didn't have refrigeration, no electricity, but a pear you could wrap up in newspaper and put it in a dark place, and it would slowly mature and ripen, and you'd have fruit during the winter months, which you needed for your health. They dug a hand-dug well there, and they built this log cabin, as you see in this picture. And so that's where we now have the Centennial Farm plaque in front of that cabin. It's one of the few original cabins that's on the original site that I know of in Oklahoma. A lot of them have gone to rack and ruin and all of that, and they just have been destroyed. And of course, other families have bought out the farms and had no interest. But this is one of the very few places, and we rehabbed that probably 20 years ago, and fixed the cabin up and made it, it had some attachments to it through the years that some people had put on it, a chicken house and and a place to cook. But we took it back to the original configuration and fixed it up. So on your way home, if you wanted to go by there, there's the map on that postcard that tells you when you go up 177 to Stillwater, 4.5 miles north of I-40 is the Hazeldale Road. And you turn there and you go 2 miles west and a mile north, and you see the cabin. I've called, there's a person that lives right there next to it. My granddad built that house for his parents later on. Got them out of the log cabin, built them a nice 2-story farmhouse. Well, Les Godwin lives there now, a good friend of ours, and I've called, and he's expecting you to just swing by there on the way, and he's got it all looking real nice and can show you a little bit, and you can take some pictures right there. So that'll be interesting. But anyway, so they came down, got off, and made friends with the Indians. Great-granddad was very good about sharing, and he shared his produce. He raised turkey, and he raised chickens, and you had eggs, you had meat, you had fruit, and also you learned to grow corn. Corn was very important in this part of the country. We have an old corn sheller out here that was on the farm, and you would shell the corn, and you could grind the corn, or you could feed it to your chickens or hogs or your turkeys. It didn't have a lot of beef cattle in those days. It was mainly hogs and poultry, see, because you could handle that in a small area, and you didn't have the big pastures like for a cow. Most of them had also a dairy cow, though, of course. But anyway, that's how they started. And the log cabin right there, again, it's very unusual that you find one in that shape on the original site. Go in there and you'll see big turnbuckles and cables, how we pulled it all together and kept it in good shape. Upstairs, it's a northern influence cabin because they came from Michigan. And that meant they wanted to conserve the heat. So they built a 2-story. You lived over, you had a little cooking area, and your living room was downstairs. There was a small staircase you went up, and that is where you had a rope across for a divider. The kids were on mom's side, mom and dad on the other side. Everybody had their own little trunk, and if it didn't fit in the trunk, you didn't need it. Everything had to fit in the trunk. Your bed, that's all you had. And they had a hand-dug well outside for water. And you can see the wells right over on the northwest corner of the cabin there. You'll see that. Anyway, that's how they got started. And it was not a pretty sight. You can just imagine that, the glamour and all of that you see on the movies was not there. They were just very, very hard work, the weather, just everything trying to survive. And you had to kind of prove up on the 160 acres that their allotment, and then President Roosevelt after a while gave them a patent, which we have today, a patent to the property. My granddad, J. Lloyd Ford, who started Shawnee Milling Company, there's his picture, he could see that they were having a difficult time. So he said, I've got to go get a job to get some money to help us, food and everything else. So he went to work in Oklahoma City selling women's dresses. And because he came from Michigan, he had no prejudice. And so the minority people in Oklahoma City, he treated them all the same. And because of that, the word got around, and he became really a very popular guy and he sold women's dresses to everybody, all the different tribal people and the African Americans and the whatever. And so because of that, he became very popular. Well, then the guy that had the flour mill in downtown Oklahoma City, Acme Flour Mill, heard about him and said, I need a person to help me sell flour in southeast Oklahoma. Now you got to remember, there was only buggies and a little bit of rail. No automobiles could get around. This is probably 3 or 4. And so he started, that was his territory. And he became very successful because he could play baseball and had a good tenor voice. And he would go down to these little towns and play baseball pitch for them on Saturdays, sing in the Baptist choir on Sundays, and they'd go, Mr. Ford, why don't you come back next week or 2 weeks or something, and here's some bunch of orders to get you to come back. So they'd all give him flour orders, feed and cornmeal, and he went back to Oklahoma City and turned in his orders. And goodness, they said, where'd you get all these? You know, so he just became very popular. And in '06, some people down around Ardmore, one of his customers, the Westheimer family, Simon Westheimer, they became very good friends, and he heard about this little barn. There's a picture of the barn right there that was for sale. So he came up, and he had married my grandmother, and they pooled their money, savings and everything, and bought the little barn in '06. That's how Shawnee Milling Company got started. But the farm that you're interested in here, you can see how the relationship between our family and the Kickapoo Indians was so important in the early days. Now, as we put this book together, you know, you write a book, there's a beginning, and then you get into all the meat of the book, and you try to wind it up, and you say, okay, what's going to wind this thing up? There's got to be something that I've missed. Well, we said, let's focus on the friendship between the early settlers in this area and the Native Americans, even the Kickapoo Indians. So Joe helped me, and we had a picnic. And we brought, as best we could, we went to the Kickapoo tribe headquarters, and we found out the allotment of granddads in relationship to the other tribal people that were in this area, their names. So we put out kind of an invitation to all of those that were connected somehow, and back in 1895 we were going to have a picnic, and we did. And so here is and Joe, you might tell them a little bit what we did here.
So you see in the picture, that is behind there's a teepee that Dad and I cut down with the help of the Kickapoos. We cut down the poles for it in southeast Oklahoma. They took us out when I was probably about 11 or 12, and we cut those teepee poles, and they've helped us build that teepee. And then, of course, that is today's original log cabin next to it. So we brought together their families, their tribal leadership, and then our family as well, and Dad's brother and sisters from across the state came, and we basically had a picnic and talked about the ongoing friendship. There's several products we make at the mill that are very important, corn products that are very important to their history and very important to some of their traditional feasts that they have throughout the year that we still donate to the Kickapoo Indians. And so they still come to the mill at times, and we provide them, we share with them some of those products, just as great granddad did so many years ago. So it was a wonderful picnic just to remember that history and that friendship. And Dad memorialized it with an agreement
You'll enjoy this.
that we all signed that day.
And here, I'd like for you to read, well, first let's see this.
Why don't you read it for them?
First this, let me read this for you
Yeah,
here.
why don't you read that form of what we signed that day and what the...
And you know, you think about in history, when the Americans moved west to settle the West, one of the most important things they did was try to And I know there was a lot of controversies and there was some hostilities on both sides and all that. But by and large, people tried to get along, and they tried to understand each other, and so in that, I know through the years they've worked on what I would call treaties of understanding. Who am I and who are you, and we need to get along and we need to share. Okay, so this is July the 8th, 2005. So before we had our anniversary in April of '06, we had this picnic, and this is what it was. And I said, for over 100 years, the Joseph Almeron Ford family, which settled on this site near McLeod, Oklahoma in 1895, and the Kickapoo tribe of Oklahoma have been friends and shared many memories together. We, the undersigned, commemorate this day and pledge ourselves to continued friendship and kindness to one another for the next 100 years. It is hoped that at that time, members of the same families will once again come together to renew their pledge on this day, 8th of July, 2005. And it's amazing. Look at here, how many names were there. And they all signed to you it's kind of like giving your wedding vows over, you know what I mean? It's like to reestablish who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing this kind of stuff. So that's why we did that. And then what's most interesting is the chief of the Kickapoos got up, and I didn't know he was going to do this. And it was all happening right here on this site where we did the thing. It said, Shawnee News Star, the newspaper here, will commemorate 100 years in the McLeod area for the Ford family. And this is what they read. As history becomes eventful, so does, let me get this down where you can see it a little better, a memorabilia collection with the Kickapoo tribe of Oklahoma, who have been neighbors and friends to the Ford family. The playmates for the Ford children were Murdoch, Kirk, Fry, Logan, Wapakichi, Wiles, Mesquequinic, Keskuski, Ketcheswano, Kiskaton, Curley, White, and Bentley Walker. Many other families are known, but these families listed were homeowners and or had tribal allotments near the Ford homesite. See? Now, to summarize this long-standing friendship and respect to each other, the Fords were treated with respect because they shared their gardens. Other non-Indians asked them to move closer to them. However, the area tribal members told them they would be all right and to stay put. Today, the Fords still share their food with area tribal members. This is why the Fords are having a welcome luncheon to tell the Kickapoo tribe of Oklahoma, thank you for the 100 years of neighborly love and respect that we so cherish with our ancestors, and for 100 years of memories and kindness.
Nice.
Isn't that something? So that's what we did to commemorate. And so it's not just people that came in this area and built a home site, but it's how they related once they got here. And I think that, and Oklahomans have always been noted for their friendly attitude and their friendship. And you see how many times Oklahomans are put in high places by our government in Washington because you can get along. Oklahomans don't have a lot of baggage that they carry with them. And I think that's so important to think about, is our state, we were all immigrants in this state. And once we got here, it's how did you get along with one another? How did you relate to the natives, the Native Americans that were here? And so I think that was most important. So I wanted to bring that up as part of the history, and I think it's different than you find, and maybe you find similar stories, but we're very proud of that particular part of it.
Well, you mentioned one son from the earlier days. Did he have other children?
Well, yes. My great-grandfather had 2 sons and a daughter. My Uncle Lewis Ford was the younger brother of my grandfather, and he worked here at the mill in charge of a lot of the production. And then they had a sister named Fern. I called her Aunt Fern, and she was lived around this area for a long time, and then of course passed away. But there were the three of them, and there's a picture, Joe, somewhere. Maybe it's downstairs in the historical room. We can go down there. We built a room. Well, not built, but we put a lot of memorabilia downstairs. So, but that's their children. And then, of course, my granddad had 2 boys and 2 girls. And the oldest girl was Betty, and then, but the oldest son was J. Lloyd Ford Jr., and then sister Betty, and then my dad was the 3rd child, and then he had a younger sister, Catherine. So then they had 4 children. And then me, I have 2 sisters and a brother, so there are 4 of us. And so I'm the 3rd generation here at the mill, and Joe is the 4th generation.
So how many children do you have?
Well, I have 2 girls and a boy, and Joe's got 2 girls and a boy.
Okay, so 4 to 3 to 3.
So, but anyway, that's kind of the history of it, and
Well,
you know, you know what you don't know and what you can't really get the flavor of unless you were actually sitting here talking with them is how hard it was. We go through 110-degree weather and we complain and all that, but we duck inside to the air conditioning. Or we turn on the tap and we got clean water that comes out. Boy, this is pretty neat. Clean, cool water. Or we go turn on the stove, you got natural gas, you just cook your bacon and eggs. It wasn't that way, you know, they just struggled every day to eat and clean and do all those things. Excuse me, go ahead, what you got, Mary? So anyway, that's the real part of the history that a lot of us don't really, I don't think, appreciate that much. Still don't. It's so foreign to us to think about the things that we take for granted. You get in your car, you go to a hospital, there's a school, you go buy a pump and get some little gasoline and run a car. You didn't even have cars, you know. So we're very, and I think it's important that we and you all maintain the continuity of the history for all of us, because it's so easy in today's world to forget that and forget the sacrifices that people made. Boy.
well, did he have a job off the farm, your great-grandfather?
No, I think they just kind of got tired. And my granddad built the mill and then was able to take care of them. And then they moved to Shawnee when he started the mill, and he fixed a little place for them there east of their house. So.
Well, after the pears and the turkeys, did they raise other crops or?
Corn.
Corn.
Yeah, corn was the main thing because you could use it to feed your livestock, your chickens, grind it, for your cornmeal. Let's see, what was the story I was going to tell you? Slipped my mind.
Well, did you spend much time out there in your youth?
Yeah, Dad would take my brother and I out there a lot, and we would always go out and clean up brush and trim, and you didn't have a lot of equipment, like we didn't have tractors and brush hogs and all that kind of stuff. And Bob and I, my brother Bob, the Indian, there was an encampment of Kickapoos right south of the farm, about a mile south. And so on the summertime, the wind was out of the south, and in the evenings you could hear them. A lot of times they'd have little get-togethers and have their drums, see. So you could hear the drums beat. And Brother Bob and I, we just, kids back there, we just did a lot of things you wouldn't think about today, but we just took off and said, Dad, we'll be back. About 8, 9, 10 years old. And we walked down there, and they'd see us coming, and they'd take us over, and they couldn't speak English. A lot of them still speak Kickapoo, and they would give us some water out of the spring, and then we sit there and just visit a minute and then walk back. You know, that was a big adventure for us. And they were always so kind to us. The Indians were, Kickapoo. So anyway,
When did the farm get electricity?
boy, that's a good question. REA came through, and probably, I'm gonna guess, during the Depression. I'm not sure when that was, but I'd guess that's when the rural electric came into being. I'm not sure about the dates, but that was a big moment, you know, to get electricity.
And did they do any other like conservation efforts on the farm, build
Well, I
ponds
think,
or-
you know, a lot of things they didn't know, but then when they did try to plow and had a little bit of wash, then that's when the government had programs to educate you on the proper way to plow in terraces and contour lines, so you just didn't plow up and down the hills and cause a wash. Oklahoma, our soil is such that it washes pretty easy if you have bad practices, bad farming practices.
And was McLeod the closest town where
Yeah,
they would
it
take their
was.
products?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to tell you that. I'm glad you mentioned that, because when they came down, they brought barley with them from up north and some oats. And he used that to barter for food in McLeod. He'd go over there with a sack of it, and they would get food and whatever they needed. But it said in the book there, they were only able to get what they needed after the guy could sell the barley and the oats. So he had to find a buyer for them, and then he was able to pay them. And then they used the money for food and different supplies.
Well, what had he done in Michigan?
He did a lot of things. Farmer one, he was a salesperson. He, you know, you remember about 1890s, there was like a depression in our history of the United States, and the upper Midwest was having some problems, and that was one of the things that kind of pointed them to go look for a better deal. But he did just a lot of odd jobs.
And he was already married when he came,
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
already had children.
Uh-huh.
Do you know much about where they went to school when they got here?
No, I think they, let me think. You know, if you went through the 6th grade, you were pretty well educated back in those days. And I think they were all over the 6th grade level when they came here.
And church was an important part of.
Yes, my great-grandmother was a Northern Baptist. And when they came down, that's, you know, Granddad helped build the little Hazeldale Baptist Church right there on the corner. When you came down, when you turn on that map there, there's let me show you that little corner right here. Right here, excuse me, right here, right there is a Hazeldale Baptist Church, and you'll turn and go. There's no intersection here, so you go 2 miles and a mile. But he helped start that little church right there. Granddad did. And great-grandmother was a very strong Northern Baptist.
And then your grandfather grew up on the farm as well?
No, not so far as growing up. They just did chores, and then he went to Oklahoma City and got him a job.
Okay, that's
See, he was close to 18, 19 years old when they came down. But now there's a Kickapoo Indian school that's over on this mile section here. The farm is on the northeast corner of the section. If you go to the southwest corner, there's no Kickapoo Indian school there. It's been mainly torn down.
What are the other structures on the farm outside of the cabin?
Well, there was a barn, of course, years ago, and it's been gone to pot. And then Granddad built this nice 2-story frame house his parents, and there was, back there they would take, it's hard to get any kind of materials, so they built a little shed on the side of the log cabin for chickens and stuff like that, and then they built a kitchen. They just tried to move the heat out. They all of a sudden, whoa, this is not good because it's so hot here. People that came from Georgia over to Oklahoma, they built what was called a dog trot house. Have you heard that word? Well, a dog trot house is you lived here and you had your kitchen and your little area there that you cooked with, and you just joined it together with a little covered porch. And so that was called the dog trot. Because the people from Georgia, they didn't want the heat. The people that came from Michigan, they tried to, and you'll see ours is a 2-story log cabin. So, anyway.
And that it's been important to the family to keep the piece of land this entire time?
Yeah, it's never been outside the family since 1895. And, I've made it my kind of, I'm a guy that likes projects. And this is one of my projects. But I've now, our company, Shawnee Milling Company, which Granddad started and all that, has now bought the farm. And so the farm now resides in the company, which is, and our family are the stockholders, the owners of the company. So in effect, it's still in the family this way. But for tax purposes, we had to do that to keep it from, you have to sell it to pay the taxes on inheritance. Our government's made it very hard to hold on to things like this, but we've done it through that direction.
And what's going on the property today?
Well, I've got a man that leases it, and he had a bulldozer, and so he has cleaned up a lot of stuff for us. And we're going to burn a bunch of brush piles, but he's opened up the grass back again. It was just overrun by blackjack timber and blackberry bushes and stuff like that. So we're making some big headways getting it back to restore the grasslands the way it was.
And your grandparents and great-grandparents had a garden?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they all had, that was a very important part. Right west.
Canyon?
That's a good question. I'm sure they did later on. Right at the beginning, it was just a matter of survival, but I think as soon as they could, they started the canning process.
And chickens, you said?
Oh, yeah, chickens and turkeys and fruit. And there were some old pecan trees there that he raised. But, the livestock provided the chickens and provided the meat. And
Well, as a youngster, would you go back for holidays like Christmas and
Oh,
Thanksgiving?
we go, of course, when I came along, I was born in 42, and so we'd always go out to the farm, usually on Saturdays, to help, clean things up, and just always, there's just a lot of things that needed to be done all the time. My great-grandparents were gone in the early 50s by then. They'd moved to Shawnee, and so they'd kind of leased the little log cabin to another person. And so we had to go out and do a lot of repairs and cleaning and,
Then I'm assuming you don't have a first tractor story for us?
No, yeah, the tractors were pretty crude, and they use them to plow and turn the soil and then plant corn. And I can remember that, but I don't, there wasn't really so-called brush hogs and front-end loaders and all that kind of stuff. That's about all they did with the tractor, was turn the plow, where you could take and plant corn, harrow it down and raise corn.
You were born in 42, so at the beginning of, or during the war, World War II then?
Yeah, right at the beginning.
And where did you go to school?
Right here in Shawnee. Joe went to school here in Shawnee, at the University of Oklahoma. Joe went to University of Oklahoma. My dad went to University of Oklahoma. So all, there's 3 generations there.
So education was important.
Oh my, yeah, that's huge, you know. Grandparents were always, because they didn't have those opportunities. It's not that they weren't smart enough, they just didn't have, when you're working and working and working and working and, you know, can to can't is what they always used to say. You can see, and when you can't see, you quit. Had you heard that before?
No.
Well, how long do you work? Can to can't. But you know, the other thing is, I don't remember people having injuries, back injuries and stuff like that. Because people were just, you grew up working, and so you didn't have, you were used to it. And now these big old boys today, they're always having back injuries. But when you grew up on a farm working, lifting, moving, you know.
Was there a time that they thought they might lose the farm?
No, I know they had to borrow money, you know, then pay it back. But I don't remember that. They were always very careful. You just didn't want to ever get overextended.
And why McLeod though? But I mean, I know it was part of the land allotment, but why did they pick McLeod?
Well, that's where you came on the Kickapoo Land Run.
That's where it started.
That's where it started.
Okay.
Because the tribal headquarters was right north of McLeod, and the railroad came to McLeod.
And they had their allotment or their land in before they came? They already knew
No,
what they would
when
do?
they got it when they came.
When they came. And has that town changed much?
Oh, sure, McLeod, you know, it was just a whistle stop back there, and now, of course, now with Oklahoma City coming this way, it's growing.
Not been there, so we'll check it out on the way back.
I hope you'll go by the site and take pictures.
We sure will.
And then in the book here, you'll enjoy seeing a lot of the history of and some of these early pictures. Yeah. So.
With the various children through the years, there wasn't an issue of who got the farm?
No, well, my dad was pretty smart about that he, you know, he worked, and he worked out where he would purchase so he purchased it from the other members because they had no interest, and they lived in Oklahoma City, and Dad had the interest to keep it going, so he purchased it from his parents, and then put it in his trust, and then we've taken it and put it in the company's ownership, so it's not out for being dispersed.
So the next 100 years is in pretty good,
Yeah, sure.
pretty good shape then.
So anyway, I hope that kind of gives you a flavor of everything.
It does, do you have anything else?
Joe, do you have any special memories of the farm?
Well, growing up, we spent a lot of time up there. There's a nice place to fish on the property, and we'd go up there and pick blackberries. There's a good blackberry patch kind of right behind the cabin. Spent a lot of memories doing things like that with my sisters and of course my mom and dad. And then just it's a pretty area. It's a little bit outside of Shawnee, and so that was kind of a nice way to get out of town a little bit and go out there and spend some time, and just how proud you were that we still had this property in the family after all these years, and how hard it must have been for them to leave what they would probably consider civilization and move to this area. Just is very humbling, and so we're very proud to have it, and also to think about what Peepaw, that's what I call my great-grandfather or Dad's granddad, we call him Peepaw, what he did to start from that beginning and to build the foundation for Shawnee Milling Company and all the employees and the families that depend on it today is something we're very proud of. So, pioneering spirit of building the log cabin and coming down here just continued into the kind of the entrepreneurship of starting the company and seeing it grow. Dad, you might say a couple words about Peepaw's involvement in OBU and the Gideons. 'Cause that's one of the things
you ever
we've
heard of the Gideons?
Just a
Put the
little.
little Bibles in hospitals and
Mhm.
schools. He was the first Gideon in Oklahoma because it started just a few years earlier in Michigan, Gideon organization. And he brought that with him when he came down. He was very interested in that. And then the other thing was Oklahoma Baptist University was getting ready to look for a place to start the college. And Granddad helped build First Baptist Church here, and he and some other people got together in Shawnee and donated the land out north of town here for the college to get started. And so he was a trustee for, I don't know, 20-some, 30 years. It's a beautiful college today, university.
Sounds like they were very civic-minded from the beginning.
Very, very much.
Involved with
Yeah,
Shawnee as well.
always. Yeah. He was quite a guy. Well, I mean, so, but, you know, and I think you'll find these stories probably similar to other pioneers. They had that can-do attitude, work together, be friends, you know, a strong foundation of where they came from and what they brought with them, the desire to have culture and to have civilization. And it's not root and toot and shoot 'em up. It was, let's have churches and schools and build things and help each other. And so I think that's what you find more than anything else.
Well, you described for us this cabin. Can you talk a little bit more about the house that was built across the street?
Well, it's just, you'll see a two-story frame house, and it's very plain, but it's beautiful, I think. It's two-story, and we've put some siding on it and a new roof, things like that.
And you spent time in it growing up, though?
Yeah, sure.
Can you describe the layout, you know, similar to?
Well, you go in the front door, and the stairs will go upstairs, and then you got a little living room on the north side, and I think a little bedroom on the south, and a bedroom upstairs too, and then a kitchen in the back.
Bathroom, indoor, outdoor?
Yeah, it was outdoor for a long time, and now they've got indoor.
Was it a two-seater or a one-seater
Boy,
outside?
I think what I remember is one. Yeah.
Good memories, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Was there a favorite dish you liked that your grandmother would fix?
Sure, chicken and dumplings. She could make dumplings out of the flour here at the mill, just, ooh, knock your eyes out. You know, she could really cook. And her biscuits. She made big biscuits, not the little biscuits, but big biscuits. That's what he liked, big biscuits.
And fresh chickens, I'm assuming, from the
Yeah.
backyard?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Where Joe lived on Broadway Street there for a while, the home that my granddad built when he came to Shawnee, started the mill, beautiful house, 1420 North Broadway. You might want to write that down, and on your way out, you could go and buy and see that. It's a two-story house that faces east on the west side of Broadway, 1420. And in the backyard, there's a little concrete slab back there where they had the chicken house. It was still there. And of course, we'd go there on Sundays and, you know, they got fresh chicken and dumplings.
And if you were lucky, blackberry cobbler?
Blackberry cobbler, you know.
There's anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I just appreciate what you all are doing, and I think it's important to try to keep all this alive and well documented, and you know, and maybe these history classes that come along, it's not just do this and put it on the shelf, but I hope that through the educational system of Oklahoma, some of these could maybe be put into like a video or something and show these to kids around the time when we have Statehood Day, okay? And kids a lot of times dress up in bonnets. We have some bonnets back here. Had a lady make them for me one time. You ever seen the bonnets that the little girls wear or wore? Stuck way out. but they didn't want the sun and the long sleeves. But the bonnets were handmade, and you know, you could have kids on statehood day put on programs and show these, and show so it comes alive to them.
Well, did you go to when they gave you the designation certificate and all that, did you go to that ceremony?
Yes, oh yeah, we went out to, gosh, Sayre, I think it was. Where was it? I think it was out to Sayre, Oklahoma. Way out there when we had that presentation on the Centennial Farm Award.
It was important for you to go through that process.
Oh,
get it.
yeah, very, appreciative of the state and to do that, because that does help preserve the history. But there aren't many left, I guess, around, or places to see, are there?
When we started our project, there were about 900,
Mm-hmm.
and now there are 12 or 1,500, I think.
Good.
But some are falling by the wayside
Yeah,
along the,
Like
along
here's
way
the
to
site,
visit.
and all you see is the site.
Yeah, some of the subdivision.
Uh-huh.
And
Sure.
also, not as many, and there's sure not as many still cabins.
And that's the original cabin. You'll see, I think when I fixed it up, there's 1 or 2 logs that I had to replace with like railroad ties. But the rest of them, you can see the axe marks on the wood when you look at that cabin.
Well, it speaks to endurance and persistence and,
Oh, yeah.
and dedication, I guess.
Well, and friendship. I hope that's one of the things that you focus on, are the people and how they really establish themselves. You know, you can't come in and run roughshod over somebody else. You come in and try to be friends and neighbors.
Well, we appreciate you being friends today, sharing your story with us.
Thank you. I'm
Thank you.
glad you